Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the 2024 presidential election between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump in a rematch from 2020. And basically, I made these ratings myself and how I characterize some of these swing states moving forward, whether they are leaning towards the right in favor of Trump or leaning towards the left in favor of Joe Biden. We're going to be taking a look at my ratings specifically. But before we begin with the video, make sure you guys are subscribed, click the bell so you get notified whenever I upload a video instead of missing out on any of them. And also, if you are interested, we have memberships, so if you're looking for that, it's in the description section. Now back to the topic of today's video. So what you're seeing here on your screen is basically my model rating for every swing state in the 2024 presidential election. They are filled in either likely, lean, or tilt for either Biden or Donald Trump. So let's begin with the likely states for Trump and Biden. So as of today, if the election was held today, I think Trump wins Florida by 7%, which is going to be considered likely. I think a lot of these counties have shifted towards the right. The state entirely has just abandoned the Democratic Party. Ron DeSantis overperformed massively in the polls. He won by nearly 20% in the 2022 midterms. So you can see these shifts and trends that are obviously going in favor of Trump. And then Miami-Dade County was won by Biden in 2020. That actually flipped to DeSantis in 2022. So I expect Trump to flip Miami-Dade County. So that's going to shift the state even more to the right. And so that's as for Florida. Now, as for Texas, it's a border state, so things get messy. Obviously, Biden is disapproved of on the issue of immigration, negative 33%. That's how bad he is on the issue of the border crisis. And if Texas is impacted by this and people are feeling this, then this issue is only going to go in favor of Donald Trump in the long run. And so I think Trump is going to win Texas by 7%. Same with Florida in 2024. I think both of those states, Texas and Florida, would have around the same margins. So considering 2024 is slightly going to be more favorable for Donald Trump, I could tell you right now, Trump is going to perform around 2 percentage points better than where he did in this state back in 2020, considering the border. Likely states for Joe Biden, starting off with Colorado. I think this state entirely shifting towards the left in favor of Democrats. Colorado just keeps getting bluer than it already pretty much is, already a blue state. I think Biden's going to win this by arguably 9 to 10 percentage points, which is around the same margin he got in 2020. He won it by double digits of 10%. So I think it might be closer, but still it's not going to matter as the state is trending towards the left. I think he's going to win it by a comfortable margin of 9%, which is going to be likely for him. Arguably, it could be safe for Biden. As well as New Mexico, I think is still going to comfortably go to Biden by a likely margin, but it's still going to be somewhat slightly more closer than Colorado would be. Instead of the 9% of Colorado going for Biden, I think New Mexico is going to go for him by 7%. So a couple points, closer, but still Biden's going to comfortably win both of those states in this year's election cycle. Considering that New Mexico is a border state, maybe that can, go somewhat in favor of Trump, but still, I'm not sure if it's going to deal that much damage as Albuquerque, Democratic strongholds. I think Biden can perform very well in there. And then also one last likely state before we move on is Ohio. I have Trump winning Ohio by roughly 9 to 10 percentage points, so around the same margin. Biden wins Colorado. So I think Ohio is just shifting towards the right. That's obvious. We all know this by now. This is becoming a very pro-Trump state. And with that being said, I think Trump's going to comfortably win this in 2024. Now moving on to the lean states for both candidates, starting off with the state of Georgia. So basically, the main reason why Biden won Georgia back in the 2020 election was because he got high turnout among African-American voters. He had that BLM momentum, and the state swung 6 points to the left in favor of Biden, and I don't expect him to get the nearly 90% he got among African-American voters, basically minorities in general. And so a lot of the Atlanta suburbs have shifted in favor of Biden, and he was very popular. Now, in 2024, we're looking at a different environment in which I think it's going to favor Trump a lot more. You saw what happened in the 2022 midterms. Even though Raphael Warnock still won by a couple points on the Senate, still, Brian Kemp performed very well on the governorship. He won by 7%, in which he actually performed better than his 2018 margin against Stacey Abrams. So you can see that Republicans still had gains in the governorship, and so I think a lot of that Brian Kemp support might go to Donald Trump, and it's going to flip. I think Georgia will be one of the more easier flips for Trump in this election. I think he's going to win it by roughly 4 percentage points if the election was held today, which obviously would swing 4% to the right in favor of Trump. I think Trump is more than likely going to flip Washington County. Biden only won it by 0.7%. That's how dead close it was. I think it's going to flip to Trump. And then as well as Sumter County, Biden won it by a little greater margin, but I still think that can get closer and narrower. Biden won it by almost 5%. Maybe it would get closer, which I think it will, obviously. And then Savannah, Biden overperformed very well there, and so I don't expect him to do that. And I think he can drop as low as 80% among black support. And if Trump is lucky enough, Biden might only get 70% among that group, because Trump is actually pulling a fourth among them, 25%. So if that's the real numbers on election day, then yes, Trump is easily going to flip Georgia in 2024. And then as for North Carolina, I think this state is slightly more red than Georgia is. So with that being said, you saw what happened in the 2020 election. While Georgia flipped to Biden, North Carolina did the exact opposite, and they stayed for Donald Trump. Trump won this state by 1.5 percentage points, and which I think he's going to expand his margin in 2024, considering that Biden was like 10% more popular than where he is today. His approval rating was way better, and he was seen more as a moderate candidate. We had COVID. Voters wanted change in leadership, and Biden bring that to the table, in which he is not offering that in the 2024 election. So with that being said, I think Trump expands his lead from his 2020 margin, similar to 2016, considering with all these third-party candidates included. I think Cornel West could take away some of that black support away from Biden, and that's going to help Trump. Not only in North Carolina, but in some of these other states like Georgia, and then the Detroit area and Michigan, which we'll get to later. I think Trump's going to win North Carolina by roughly 4% in 2024, regardless if Mark Robinson does or does not win on the governorship. Even if Mark Robinson loses, I still think Trump is going to outperform him on the general election level. So that's where we're at on North Carolina. And then moving on to the state of Virginia. If the election was held today, I think Biden wins Virginia by about 6%. Keep in mind, he won it by 10% in 2020. So he did barely crack double digits. But considering that the governor there, Glenn Youngkin, endorsed Donald Trump, he's a very well popular governor. He's sitting at a 58% approval rating as of today. So maybe that can take away some of that support away from Biden, and it'll only make the race a little bit closer in Virginia and make the state more narrower. But still, it's not going to be enough of a margin for Trump to overcome. And some polls actually suggest that Biden only wins Virginia by 3%. So that's not looking good for Biden. And so at the end of the day, I think Biden's going to lose 4% from his margin of 10 points in Virginia in the 2024 election from 2020. I think he's only going to win it by 6%, which is considered a lean margin in my opinion. And then as for the state of Minnesota, I think Biden wins it by 4% if the election was held today, which is basically in line with the majority of polls. Keep in mind, he won the state by 7 points in the 2020 election. Obviously, we had BLM, Minneapolis, obviously Democratic stronghold, so Biden's not going to get that turnout. A lot of that BLM support will wind down. It will make the state more narrower, but I think something that would help Biden in the state is probably white suburban women, issues like abortion. If those would, get voters to the polls, I think Biden still wins the state, but it's still going to be a whole lot closer, but still greater than Hillary Clinton's margin. I think Biden gets it by roughly 4 percentage points. And then as for the Sunbelt state of Arizona, if the election was held today, I currently have Donald Trump winning it by roughly 1.3%. This state is so crucial to a Trump victory in 2024 is because if Trump loses Arizona, he can still flip Wisconsin, he can still flip Nevada, he can still flip Georgia, but still loses the election if Biden holds on to Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. Being said, I honestly think it's a must-win at this point for Trump if he wants to win the election. Arizona is required for him. And it's going to be very important for both Biden and Trump. Biden still can win the election without winning Arizona if he holds on to those 3 Rust Belt states. But I think Maricopa is going to be very important. I think whoever wins Maricopa is probably going to win the state. Keep in mind, Biden won it by 2 points in 2020. So I think if Trump flips Maricopa, he's probably going to win the state considering the border crisis. Arizona, just like Texas, is a border state. So if voters are impacted by this, they're probably going to turn out in favor of Donald Trump. And if Trump does well with the neocons, the establishment, then and independents, I think he can do very well in this state. And a lot of those neocons and establishment voters of Arizona on the Republican Party did not turn out for Trump in 2020. And actually, some of them, a good amount of them, actually went for Biden. And if a lot of that support would go to Trump, considering the border crisis, I think Trump wins it. But obviously, you saw what happened with the 1864 abortion ruling, so I think that can go in favor of Biden. But still, is it going to be enough at the end of the day? I'm not sure. I think the border crisis would cancel that out. And considering that the number one issue where Biden is struggling on the most is immigration, he's underwater by net negative 33%. I think Trump is going to flip Arizona by about 1% in 2024, even though the state is shifting in favor of Democrats and shifting towards the left. You saw what happened in the 2022 midterms. Democrats did very well. They performed very well in this state overall. But at the end of the day, I think Trump is a narrow favored in Arizona by a tilt to lean margin. And then as for New Hampshire, I think Biden wins it by 4% if the election was held today. This state typically does not favor incumbents, and Biden was the challenger in 2020, obviously. So this year, I think it would be less favorable for him. And considering that we have all these third-party candidates, I think RFK can perform very well in this state, which will take away some of that support that went to Biden in this state specifically in 2020. And so it will narrow and wind down the margins in favor of Trump. But still, it's not going to be enough for Trump to overcome it in the state. I still think Biden wins New Hampshire by a lean margin of 4% in 2024. And now the last and final lean state before we move on to the tilt states is going to be the Rust Belt state of Wisconsin. And as if right now, if the election was held today, I honestly think Trump wins Wisconsin by 1%. So counties like Milwaukee, typically Democratic strongholds, I think if Biden does not overperform in what the polls are suggesting there, he's not going to win this state because currently Trump is the narrow favored in this state currently, but it's very close still, so Biden still can gain some ground up until the day of the election. And then places like Green Bay, I think Trump is going to perform very well in this election. And I think if Trump is able to flip some of these counties, he's probably going to win the state. For example, Door County, Biden only won it by 1.5 percentage points. Very narrow. I think that can possibly flip to Donald Trump. And I honestly think it comes down to inflation, the economy, gas prices, what you're paying at the grocery store, and basically how much you're making overall. Was your life better 4 years ago than where it is today? That's pretty much what it comes down to. And if voters feel the impact of inflation, they're not going to like the Biden administration, and they'll probably vote to Donald Trump. Keep in mind, Biden only won the state by 20,000 votes, which is actually less than how much Trump won it in 2016. Trump won it by 0.8% compared to Biden's 0.6%. So, considering that Trump performed 0.2 better in the state when he won it than Biden's margin, I can tell you right now that I think that Wisconsin is probably going to flip to Donald Trump in 2024. I think it's going to favor him. And now moving on to the tilt states before I end out the video. So believe it or not, I actually don't have any tilt states for Joe Biden. So let's begin with the state of Nevada, in which if the election was held today, I have Trump winning it by under percentage point, 0.7 to be exact. I think it can get very close. And Republicans usually are overhyped in the state every single election cycle. You take a look at the 2022 midterms in the Senate. Adam Laxalt was poised to do so well. He underperformed massively. He lost at the end of the day. So basically, if the polls are overestimating Trump, Biden can still win this state. But still, Trump is up in Nevada by 4% as of today. So if there was a 3% polling error, for example, let's just say, Trump still wins this by 1%. So Trump is still favored in the state. And I think Nevada is easier to flip than what you're probably thinking. Mind you, Biden won this state by 2.5 percentage points in 2020, which was basically around the same margin Hillary Clinton won it. So considering that the nation shifted a lot in favor of Biden and he still could not perform better than Hillary Clinton's margin, goes to show you that this state is trending to the right. I mean, if Trump is able to flip Reno County or Washoe in Nevada, Biden won it by roughly 4.5 percentage points. If Trump is able to flip it, then I think he's on track to win this state. And then as for Clark County, the Vegas area, Trump doesn't necessarily have to flip the state, but what he can do is get it a lot closer than where it was in 2020. And if he's able to peel a lot of that support away from Biden into his favor, I think Trump wins this state, honestly. And so at the end of the day, I think Trump is barely going to win this state by a tilt margin. I mean, believe it or not, if George W. Bush could have done it, I think Trump can definitely do it as well. And then moving on to these Rust Belt states, Michigan, I currently have it as a toss-up at the end of the day. So at this point in time, I think it's a tie. But the reason why I have Trump winning it by 0.3% was because if I left it off in a tie, then it'll be boring. And so the tiebreaker, in my opinion, would be Trump. I think if I had to choose Biden or Trump in Michigan, I would narrowly choose Trump by 0.3%. I think that's how close I think this state can ultimately get. And so Donald Trump, I believe, was endorsed by the police association. I believe that's what they're called. And so maybe that can go in favor of him. And also, you saw what happened in the Democratic primaries. Roughly 100,000 people voted uncommitted. So we really don't know what's going on there, but we can get a sense that with the uncommitted vote, the state is going to shift to the right in favor of Donald Trump. But on the other hand, you have places like Detroit and the suburbs here in Michigan are actually shifting towards the left. So if Trump is able to overcome that, I think he can win the state. But the uncommitted voters alone is not enough to flip the state because Biden won it by 150,000 votes around there in 2020. So if Biden loses 100,000 votes from uncommitted, he still wins it by roughly 50,000 votes. So Trump is going to have to flip another 50,000 votes on top of the uncommitted that Biden already loses. But if Trump is able to flip Saginaw County, which barely went to Biden, he only won it by 0.3%. So I think that is more than likely going to flip to Trump. And then also, I think Trump can win the state if he flips this county. It only went to Biden by 0.5%. I don't really know how to pronounce that. And just like I stated earlier for Minnesota, it honestly comes down to white suburban women, issues like abortion. If that really pisses off voters, that's going to drive them to the polls and they're going to turn out in favor of Biden. But considering the state of the economy, inflation, and all that, what you're paying overall, I think it's going to go in favor of Trump. So at the end of the day, I think this race is currently a tie at the moment. It's toss-up. But according to polling averages, Trump is actually winning the state by 2%. So whether the polls are overestimating him or underestimating him, Trump is the narrow favorite in this state currently. Last and final state to cover before I end out the video is going to be the Rust Belt state of Pennsylvania, in which if the election was held today, I also think this is going to be a complete toss-up, a tie 50-50 for either Trump or Biden. Keep in mind this is Biden's home state, so if he loses it, yeah, that's not going to be good. That's going to be embarrassing. But for the tiebreaker, just like Michigan, I think Trump wins it by 0.4%. That's how close I think both Michigan and Pennsylvania would be. I think those states will get very close in the 2024 election. There might even be a recount, honestly. And so actually polls are suggesting that Biden can actually still win this race. It's currently a tie according to polling averages. I think Biden's lead is actually around somewhere between 0 to 1%. So it's actually very close in this state. I think Biden performs better in Pennsylvania than he does in Michigan or Wisconsin. And then I think if he's able to overperform in what the polls are saying in Philadelphia, the Pittsburgh suburbs, that basically Democratic strongholds, then I think he could win this state. But if he underperforms the polls, I think he's going to lose this state. And so I think if Biden is able to hold on to Erie County, which helped him win the state in 2020, and obviously Trump won Erie County in 2016. So that's very important, and it kind of reminds me of Maricopa in Arizona. Biden only won this by 1%. So I honestly think that it could possibly flip to Donald Trump. And every single president, dating back all the way to 2008, who won Erie County specifically, won the entire state of Pennsylvania. Biden won Erie County in 2020. He won Pennsylvania. Trump won it in 2016. He won Pennsylvania. Barack Obama in 2012 won Erie County. He won Pennsylvania. So basically, whichever nominee wins Erie County is probably going to win the entire state. And so I think if Trump is able to peel a lot of that support away in Century County, I don't know if I pronounced that right, Biden only won it by 5%. Trump doesn't have to win this county, but if he's able to perform very well and narrow down the margin, I think Trump is on track to win this state. But if the election was held today, I can tell you right now, this state is going to be very close, and I honestly think Biden can win this, and I think Trump can win this as well. I'm going to leave that as a toss-up for now, but if I had to choose either Trump or Biden, I would tell you it's going to be 0.4% for Donald Trump. That's the margin or the rating I have it in as of now. And obviously, Northampton is going to be very important. If Trump flips this county, then Biden is in trouble. He might lose the state. He only won it by 0.7% for that county. So this county is going to be very important to watch. It was very close. And so it honestly comes down, basically for all these Rust Belt states in general, Michigan, Pennsylvania, whether it's Wisconsin, it doesn't really matter. The Rust Belt in general, it honestly comes down to union workers. They endorse Biden. So honestly, the entire election really comes down to this one state, and it happens to be Pennsylvania. But still, even if Biden wins Pennsylvania, he doesn't automatically win the election. Trump can still flip Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia and still get past 270 electoral votes. So let me know your thoughts, opinions in the comment section down below. So at the current moment, if the election was held today, I currently have Donald Trump winning 312 electoral votes. So basically, this video is kind of like an election prediction, but I actually have the margins for every single swing state displayed out because I don't really show the margins when I do my predictions. So this video is kind of different. You can take a look at these margins. Let me know if you agree with me on the margins, and do you have Trump or Biden winning? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And also, one last final reminder before I close out this video is to subscribe and click the bell so you get notified whenever I upload a video instead of missing out on any of them. And also, we have memberships, so if you're interested, it's in the description section. We have custom perks and custom emojis that you can use whenever you comment on any of my videos. Thank you everyone for watching.